All right, so here we go. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Inna alhamdulillah, nahmaduhu wa nastaghfiruh, nahmaduhu wa nasta'inuhu wa nastaghfiruh wa nastahdihi wa na'udhu billahi min shururi anfusina wa min sayyiati a'malina. So last time we actually were talking about the story of Prophet Musa alayhi salam with al-Khadr when he goes to a journey, and in the first round he basically loses the fish. That's the sign that where that man is going to be found. And then he finds the guy, continues the way. He asks him to be his mentor, his teacher. And then in the first, he told him on a condition that he has to be patient. He continues. In the beginning, he basically goes into a village, asks for food. They don't give him food. And then sees some other children that their wall was going to break. So we talked about how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had given that man the knowledge to put up that wall because their father was pious, and that we talked a lot about that. And we talked about of how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is protecting families, is protecting the children because their father was pious. And we talked about how he saw a young boy that was a naughty boy, let's call it that way, and then he kills him. Mm-hmm. And Prophet Musa alayhi salam couldn't handle that, and he just called it an amran nukra. It's a grave matter, or it's a deviation. And then he explains to him that the reason why he had killed him is because his parents were pious, and if this child was to stay alive, or their son was to stay alive, he was going to cause deviation for the family. And we talked a lot about the issue of evil and how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala might bring an evil thing to you, but in reality it's not actually an evil thing. You only see it from one angle, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has his ways. We talked about that. And we also talked about the third story when they go on a ship, and then he does some kind of a deformity for the ship, and then that ship, Prophet Musa alayhi salam, he sees what he had done, so he gets angry, and then he says, why did you do this to the ship? This is an evil doing. And then the man explains to him that the reason why I did it was because there was a king. Every good ship he will confiscate. So this is to help these poor men that have that ship as their main source of living keep the ship. And we talked about evil. We talked about evil, and when we talk about evil, we said it's theodicy in philosophy. And when we talk about evil, there are different ways of perceiving evil. Do we perceive evil from the direction, from the sign that this is absolute evil and nothing but absolute evil? How do we understand evil when we talk about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? So when we say the ayat say min sharri ma khalaq, from the evils that he created, does that mean that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can create evil too?
Well, evil is present.
Evil is present. So min sharri ma khalaq.
Yeah.
That some things Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created are evil.
Yeah.
Yes.
To test us.
To test us. So
why do I have?
So here's the thing, is that there's a difference between things that are created in nature and things that are created or that are a result of human action, and things that somebody might do. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not do absolute evil. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not create absolute evil. Absolute evil is attributed to people. People might commit absolute evil. Kill the child, rape the child, people can commit absolute evil. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, why doesn't Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala punish these people that are doing evil right instantly, rather than let people still practice evil and do evil and get away with it? Because this life is a test. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because this life is a test, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave people the free will. The free will to do the test. Are they going to let their urges control them? Or are they going to let the principle determine their action? So because people are being tested, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave them free will. But when we talk about min sharri ma khalaq, from the evils that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created, when we talk about from the evils that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created, we're actually talking about from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not create absolute evil, and that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is al-Hakim. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the most wise. But in some things, there can be an evil side to it relating to you. So, for example, a snake. Its venom can be used as medicine, and its venom can be something that might harm you and kill you. So when we talk about from the evils that He created, from one of those dimensions to the things that Allah, in the things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had created, may have an evil side to it. But it is very important to remember that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, even in the harm and even in the evil things that might happen to you, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is most just and does not let evil prevail. What does that mean? Let's start with an ayah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَمَنْ قُتِلَ مَظْلُومًا فَقَدْ جَعَلْنَا لِوَلِيِّهِ سُلْطَانًا فَلَا يُسْرِفْ فِي الْقَتْلِ. Whoever was killed in an oppressive situation, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will let those that are his guardians get some power, sultan, some power. Yet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then shifts the discussion to those people, فَلَا يُسْرِفْ فِي الْقَتْلِ. Don't take advantage of that power and go and cause harm or even killing others. What does that have to do with anything? That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling you that even when somebody is harmed, even if that harm was not related to a natural disaster, even if it's related to people causing the harm, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will still compensate those that were oppressed. Even if that meant their life was taken away. So even if they were killed, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will continue bringing justice to that person that was killed. This is not only about killing, but same thing. This is not talking only about killing, but this is talking about every single evil thing. So, if anyone harmed you, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give you some power down the road. You just wait. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give you some power to compensate for what you were patient for and for the harm that was inflicted upon you. Now, this is not only for believers, but this is also for non-believers. This is a general rule. This is a general sunnah. This is one of those laws that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created in the world. Just as He created laws of physics and laws of nature and all those different things, one of those is the laws of justice. There are certain laws that even if the person was not Muslim, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will grant them justice in this dunya and in the akhirah. Let me tell you a story. My sister's mother-in-law, somebody in the neighborhood accused my sister's mother-in-law. My sister's mother's mother-in-law. So let's say her mom, okay? Mom, her name, the girl's name is Najat, all right? Which is my sister's mother-in-law. Her mother was accused of stealing somebody in the neighborhood's gold, all right? The mother tried to defend herself, but the accuser insisted that it was her, but she couldn't get her hands on the mother. Najat, which is my sister's mother-in-law, she was only a year and a half old. Only a year and a half old. That woman, the accuser, she saw Najat, the young girl. She was playing in the neighborhood. She was only a year and a half old. She got so angry that she took Najat, the child, and literally put her hand in the meat grinder.
Stop it.
Wallahi. My sister's mother-in-law has all her hand cut from here to here. So basically all the palm. At the time this woman was pregnant. All right? At the time this woman was pregnant. The girl later lives handless, palmless. Time passes by. 16 years later. 16 years later. Of course, she was pregnant. She gets her boy. Her boy works in a stone cutting company. The stone cutting company, they would have, it's like a, what is that called? The thing that we put oil in. It looks like a cone. It's like a cone.
Like a tunnel?
Like a tunnel, like a funnel. There you go. So the stone cutting company, it's like a funnel. They would put in those rocks, and those rocks grind the rocks, and they would become pebbles in order to build with for construction. Her son was working in that company. Her own son happened to slip and fall in that machine. Totally got grinded and totally got killed. Now this is, of course, we are devastated over the son and devastated over Najat as well. Did the mother get her punishment? This is just an example. We don't have all the data of what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to do with the son that was grinded in this machine. It definitely is devastating. It definitely is very horrifying to hear the story for both. But subhanallah, you know, Allah subhanahu the Prophet or the fuqaha say al-jaza'u min jins al-amal. Al-jaza' min jins al-amal. That the punishment is given from the same type of the evil act. The stories are many, but when you look at how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does his work, it is where we would have faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that even you, as an oppressed one, never live in despair. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will compensate you for the harm. Never hold that sorrow and that despair and think, I will never be compensated. This is the end of my life. Story number 2. This is a story that my dad told me. He knows all the family. He knows everybody. And it's in a city named Al-Khalil, Hebron, in Palestine, which is the city that originally come from. He told me that a man was a rich man, and the people in Al-Khalil, they grow a lot of grapes. That's their main farming style, growing grapes and olives. So olives and grapes basically. The woman was barren. She did not get any children. The man was harvesting his grapes. His nephews come over and say, you know what? Mock the man and say, your wife is barren. Keep on harvesting. Whatever you're planting is going to be anyways inherited by us. Keep on harvesting. and started mocking the woman. Fast forward, the woman, she says, the way that they're mocking you is really hurting me. I'm going to find you a wife and get you married. She gets him married to a second wife. That woman gets 7 kids, 7 boys. Those 7 boys lived with the mother and their stepmother together. One day, they were in their farming area. And in there's a cave. The children are still very young. The woman, both women were there. The man was there. The children were there. A tornado happens, strikes a rock. The rock falls on the woman's head, the biological mother's head, kills her instantly. The children, they become cared for by the first wife. She becomes their mother. And later, they were the ones to take care of their stepmother as their own mother. And these 7 guys became part of the Mujahideen in Palestine. You know, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has his ways. These 7 boys, they were, I think 5 of them were actually later became shaheeds because of basically hunting down Israel. You know, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has his ways. You might only look at a story here and there, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is always telling us, and look at the stories around you. In the stories that you hear around you, there are many signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's ways in compensating the oppressed ones. In compensating the oppressed ones, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has his ways. But sometimes we don't hear and we don't see those signs that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is always bringing forth to us. فانطلقا حتى إذا ركبا في السفينة خرقها. We finished that one. When we look at the side, let me go back. How Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will compensate those that are pricked by evil. We just learn how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will never leave injustice to prevail, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will always compensate every single one, whether they're Muslim or not Muslim. All right. And of course, in the stories, we could see how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was teaching Prophet Musa alayhi salam through that man. One thing I forgot to mention in the last class is that the reason why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed this story is because there was actually a story behind Surah al-Kahf, the whole surah. The people of Quraysh were confused about the Prophet ﷺ, so some of the people in Quraysh, they actually went to the Jews and they said, you know, give us some questions for us to, let's say, combat or argue with him on, debate with him using those questions. So they suggested some questions, differences of narrations on what the questions really were. The Prophet ﷺ said, all right, I'll bring the answers to you regarding those questions. Jibreel alayhi salam, it took Jibreel alayhi salam some while to come back, 15 days, based on another narration, 15 days to come back to reveal the ayat about the stories that they had questioned about. And then they started mocking the Prophet ﷺ, why it took him so long, why 15 days, why he didn't get the response right away. And that story was mentioned to refute what the Jewish claim is that if he was having an angel coming to him, he would have come to him instantly. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was using this story as Prophet Musa alayhi salam, because prophets, they don't answer questions based on their own. They are supposed to get the revelation from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that's how they answer questions. They're asked not to answer any question unless they get a revelation. So here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brought the story of Prophet Musa alayhi salam to show that even in their scripture, which is another story, that even Prophet Musa alayhi salam, and brought them a story from somebody that they believe in, Prophet Musa alayhi salam, not only did he not have all the answers about life, but he also went to learn from a human like him. He also went to learn from a human like him, trying and of course refuting that, oh, if he were a prophet he would have known the answer. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brings the story that no, prophets, as even a prophet that you believe in, did not have all the answers, and even went to a man that is not a prophet to learn. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was giving him some inspiration, some ilm that even Prophet Musa alayhi salam did not have. When we continue talking about Prophet Musa and the story, part of the stories that they had inquired about was really the story of Dhul Qarnayn. The story of Dhul Qarnayn actually has some details. That's what they asked about, and the ayat were revealed to answer the questions about Dhul Qarnayn, because they had asked about Dhul Qarnayn. Who is he? Tell us some information about him. Who is Dhul Qarnayn? Muslim scholars actually had differences of opinions on who in history was that magnificent personality. Who's that magnificent character? The ayah says, وَيَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنْ ذِي الْقَرْنَيْنِ, and they ask you about Dhul Qarnayn. Dhul Qarnayn is not a prophet. Dhul Qarnayn was actually a person that the people of the book knew about, but the people of Quraysh never heard about. Dhul Qarnayn. The word Dhul Qarnayn, was that his name? Or was that a description that he was known for? Dhul Qarnayn, if I were to literally translate it, the one with the two horns. But the word horn, the Arab can use horn to refer to braids, and they could also use horn to refer to literal horns, kind of like what Alexander the Great had. All right. But when you look at also Dhul Qarnayn, it was something that the people of the book had known based on their scripture. In the scripture in the Old Testament, and specifically in the chapters in Daniel, it actually talks about Koresh, Cyrus, a king, and that this king, Cyrus, was a good king. This king had, there was a dream about this king that that was interpreted that it's referring to Koresh or Cyrus the king, and that this king, it was a dream that this was a ram with two horns, and later, according to that scripture, that it was referring to Cyrus or Koresh the king. Is that what the people in the book were inquiring about? It is probably something that they were inquiring about, and that's why they said Dhul Qarnayn. There are other scholars that said that it was Alexander the Great, but Alexander the Great never actually reached the land of Ya'juj Ma'juj. What are Ya'juj Ma'juj? Ya'juj Ma'juj are basically names for the tribes that the Arab used to call and refer to the Mongols, the Chinese, the Japanese, and the Hong Kong, and the Turks, and Turks, not Turkey, but the Turkmens. That was the name that they used to call those people. They used to call them Ya'juj Ma'juj, the people that are these tribes that we cannot understand. Now, Ma'juj or Ya'juj is basically the name that they considered those tribes. It means the tribes that are mixed, the mixed races. They didn't really have any connection with it because there was a river, which is the river of Cyrus or Koresh. That river was not easy to cross. So we're looking at farther than Afghanistan. It wasn't easy to cross because of the high mountainous areas there as well. But those people, it seemed like they had a different culture that was causing a lot of harm to those other nations. Let's continue the story. وَيَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنْ ذِي الْقَرْنَيْنِ. It was the people of the book that told the people of Quraysh to ask about Dhul Qarnayn. Who is the person that has the two horns? Who was it referring to? So the ayah responded, قُلْ سَأَتْلُ عَلَيْكُمْ مِنْهُ ذِكْرًا. I'm going to tell the details or some details of that story as a reminder. What is the story? So the ayah is telling us about, we're going to tell you, reminder. Yeah, so you asked about him. We'll give you some information. إِنَّا مَكَّنَّا لَهُ فِي الْأَرْضِ. This king, مَكَّنَّا لَهُ فِي الْأَرْضِ. مَكَّنَّا لَهُ فِي الْأَرْضِ means we had given him power on earth. مَكَّنَّا لَهُ, it's a metaphor. مَكَّنَّا لَهُ, a metaphor for a little word. To say مَكَّنَّا means we had given him lots of authority on earth. A metaphor to say that he was a great king. وَآتَيْنَاهُ مِنْ كُلِّ شَيْءٍ سَبَبًا. And we had given him the power of the different patterns of things. In other words, it was a civilization. What creates a civilization? What creates a civilization is understanding the pattern of things, what we call today physics. Right? What we call today physics. What is physics all about? Well, it's understanding the pattern of things, how things function. That's the sababa. How things function gives you the ability to use that knowledge, that power to go into military, make military, get into certain understanding different things and how they function. And from physics, you can build in different monuments. Physics goes in all directions of engineering. Here, وَآتَيْنَاهُ مِنْ كُلِّ شَيْءٍ سَبَبًا, meaning that he was given the power, even the civilization of different engineering things. Engineering, physics is power. فَأَتْبَعَ سَبَبًا, from one power to another, from one knowledge of physics to another type of physics to another type of knowledge in physics, and that got him into building a civilization until حتى إذا بلغ مغرب الشمس. Well, this king had expanded in his civilization to the point that he reached Maghrib al-Shams, where a place where a place where the sky sets. Maghrib al-Shams. In other words, we're looking at very far east. The very far east of Earth. وَجَدَهَا تَغْرُبُ فِي عَيْنٍ حَمِئَةٍ. Saw that in that area where sun was setting strong, and usually sun does not set strong, usually sun sets weaker than sunrise. But in that area, it was far in east, it was setting strong, and there he found وَجَدَ عِنْدَهَا قَوْمًا. And there he found a nation, قَوْمًا. He didn't say what qawm, he just said some tribe, some nation, a group of people. قُلْنَا يَا ذَا الْقَرْنَيْنِ. So he was يَا ذَا الْقَرْنَيْنِ. Well, was Dhul Qarnayn necessarily a prophet? No. Does wahi only come to as a form of an angel? No. Because where do we get that from? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَأَوْحَى رَبُّكَ إِلَى النَّحْلِ, that your Lord Almighty had given wahi. What is a wahi? A wahi can be an inspiration, can be a sign, because أَوْحَى رَبُّكَ إِلَى النَّحْلِ, what does that mean? Jibreel comes to the nahl, to the bees, to teach bees on how to make honey and how to make nests? No. But there's an inspiration. There's something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had given the bees, some signs, some senses to know how to build bees. Here, قُلْنَا يَا ذَا الْقَرْنَيْنِ, Dhul Qarnayn is not necessarily a prophet, but he was given a sign. That sign he may not have realized, but it's actually a sign from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Just as you might go somewhere and you're not realizing, you're just driving and you end up somewhere else, and it was really for a hikmah, for some wisdom that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, why he made you end up there. قُلْنَا يَا ذَا الْقَرْنَيْنِ إِمَّا أَن تُعَذِّبَ وَإِمَّا أَن تَتَّخِذَ فِيهِمْ حُسْنًا. You're either going to punish these people or you're going to act justly with them. Wait a minute. He didn't even, who are we talking about here? This is talking about not yet telling you what the story is, but this is telling you a theme that Dhul Qarnayn was living based on. He had a legislature where that legislature was not only making a civilization, his civilization was not only built on power of engineering and all that, but it was also building in legislature governance. His governance was based on justice. This justice where he may either punish those criminals, or he may use justice in ways to figure out on how to deal and prevent crimes before they take place. Justice, prevention comes before you try to punish. Wait, prevention. قال أما من ظلم. His announcement, Dhul Qarnayn's announcement, he said, as for those that oppress others, فسوف نعذبه ثم يرد إلى ربه. Whoever, his legislature, his great constitution was based on one. If one oppresses others, we're going to punish them, and then they're going to return to their Lord, and their Lord will punish them severely. فَيَعْذِبْهُ عَذَابًا نُكْرًا. In other words, we're not going to be gentle. Our governance is not going to be based on emotions, but we're going to make sure that we implement justice. وَأَمَّا مَنْ آمَنَ وَعَمِلَ صَالِحًا فَلَهُ جَزَاءً الْحُسْنَى. As for those that believe, in other words, have good faith, and وَعَمِلَ صَالِحًا, and do and act righteously, فَلَهُ جَزَاءً الْحُسْنَى, we will compensate them in good ways. In other words, our governance, you do good, we will give you some government assistance. فَلَهُ جَزَاءً الْحُسْنَى, give you government assistance, we'll help you, we'll be there to make sure that your needs are met. فَلَهُ جَزَاءً الْحُسْنَى. Jazaa, good repair, good compensation. وَسَنَقُولُ لَهُ مِنْ أَمْرِنَا يُسْرًا, and we'll also be kind in our words with them, meaning diplomacy. We'll be nice. We'll make sure we're not harsh with them, even if it's governance, but we'll make sure that we act with fairness and we act in kind ways. ثُمَّ أَتْبَعَ سَبَبًا. ثُمَّ أَتْبَعَ سَبَبًا. Again, what's the issue? ثُمَّ أَتْبَعَ سَبَبًا. As a result of that governance, more and more, ثُمَّ أَتْبَعَ سَبَبًا, more of that patterning, he began to have more and more power. What makes governance is not only in having the power of knowledge, but it also needs a constitution. So here the ayah is saying, ثُمَّ أَتْبَعَ سَبَبًا. In the beginning of the ayah, it talked about governance in terms of civilization and knowledge and power, expanding. In the second part, ثُمَّ أَتْبَعَ سَبَبًا, it was telling us that governance brought in even a better civilization that had justice, that had knowledge, that had good engineering. حتى إذا بلغ مطلع الشمس. He expanded until he reached a place where مطلع الشمس, a place where the sun was rising on. وجدها تطلع على قوم لم نجعل لهم من دونها سترا. He saw that the sun was rising on this nation that did not have any covering from the very strong heat of that sun. كذلك وقد أحطنا بما لديه خبرا. That is how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala أحطنا بما لديه, like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, even though he had great knowledge, he had a great civilization, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is above every single governance, is above every single knowledge, is above every single civilization. Everything that he was doing, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was aware of. ثُمَّ أَتْبَعَ سَبَبًا. Again, ثُمَّ أَتْبَعَ سَبَبًا tells you another thing that was making him even grow into a bigger civilization. What is that? أَحَطْنَا بِمَا لَدَيْهِ خُبْرًا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also gave him some knowledge of governance. Knowledge in governance. What was he depending on? He was depending on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It wasn't Gnosticism. It wasn't necessarily that he was getting direct information from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but in order to expand in civilization, he was not only acting justly and not only acting based on the information that he was getting, but he was also acting based on principle. Meaning, even himself, he was putting himself up to living up to the principle of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. حتى إذا بلغ بين السدين. He continues his expansion. His civilization continues expanding until he reached two mountains. وجد من دونهما قوما لا يكادون يفقهون قولا. And there, between these mountains, he found a nation لا يكادون يفقهون قولا. He could not understand a single thing they were saying. There was no place for communication between him and this nation, meaning even this king's interpreters could not figure out what these people were saying. قالوا يا ذا القرنين. So wait a minute, I thought they couldn't speak. How is it that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that they said يا ذا القرنين? يا ذا القرنين, these people were oppressed. So what happened? They couldn't converse with them. There was no place for any dialogue, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala still said قالوا. Meaning what? They used some type of sign language, some type where they got the issue understood by Dhul Qarnayn, even though he could not understand their language at all. But this king, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, even though he did not understand their language, but he was concerned about giving people justice. So what did they say? They complained. They said, Inna Ya'juj wa Ma'juj mufsiduna fil ard. They said, Ya'juj and Ma'juj, these nations are causing destruction on earth. They're causing destruction on earth. These nations, they didn't even know what these nations' names are. They just said these mixed races. They're causing lots of destruction on earth. فَهَلْ نَجْعَلُ لَكَ خَرْجًا عَلَى أَن تَجْعَلَ بَيْنَنَا وَبَيْنَهُمْ سَدًّا. فَهَلْ نَجْعَلُ لَكَ خَرْجًا. Would you accept that we would give you a payment? خَرْجًا, meaning some money, so that you would أن تجعل بيننا وبينهم سدا, and that way you can build a wall between us and that nation that's causing destruction. eating their foods, probably eating even probably humans. Who knows what kind of destruction they were complaining about. But they just said, we'll just give you money. He said, ما مكنني فيه ربي خير. What did he reply? He said, what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given me is enough. I don't need your money. But I've got the money. I don't need any money from you. But فأعينوني بقوة. But I just want one thing from you. I'll help you, but on one condition. Laborers come from you. All the people that are going to work, they're going to come from you. Laborers. Just give me the laborers. Give me manpower. And I've got money. I don't need the money. I just need manpower. What we learn from that is that if somebody needs help, don't always give them the help like that. No. Let them also pitch in to get in making the difference, to feel it. He told them, give me manpower. أجعل بينكم وبينهم ردما. I'll make ردما. ردma, it's like I'll build something to separate between you and them. Build something, either a wall or radam. Radam is more like some kind of a hill barrier between the both of you. آتوني زبر الحديد. Bring me iron. Now he's telling them how he's going to make this solid. And that's why I said, when I said ثم أتبع سببا, the reason why I said it was physics or chemistry or knowledge or science was because notice how he was able to talk about iron, steel, حتى إذا ساوى بين الصدفين, when it became like equal. So here he is, they're doing some kind of a measurement. قال انفخوا, said blow in it. حتى إذا جعله نارا, when it started heating. قال آتوني أفرغ عليه قطرة. He said, now bring me copper. When you talk about steel, when you talk about heat, when you talk about copper, when you talk about a certain temperature, this is science. He had the power, and he had scientists that were working with him to make justice possible. All right? So when we talk about ثُمَّ أَتْبَعَ سَبَبًا, this is talking about governance, using science, and using his own, because you can have governance, you can have science, just like the US. But right now, who's the tool to govern? Right now, it's not in God we trust anymore, as much as it's based on postmodernism, in where it's based on individualism and people's pleasures deciding on what defines governance and what defines legislature. That wasn't the case with Dhul Qarnayn. He had science to build civilization. He had government, he had governance, he was just, fairness, and he also had the power of what is the word, but word enforcement, law enforcement, and he also used the science in order to bring about justice, science and chemistry and physics and all that. فَمَا اسْطَاعُوا أَن يَظْهَرُوهُ. Ya'juj Ma'juj, they could not get out and come back to that oppressed nation again. They weren't able to. وَمَا اسْتَطَاعُوا لَهُ نَقَبًا. As much as they tried to make a hole in this brick that he had built, they weren't able to do it because it was so formidable, so strong. Now, قال هذا رحمة من ربي. Now, he said, this is from the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What was that? That he was able to bring justice to these poor people. This is a mercy from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What is it? Justice, helping others, supporting. هذا رحمة من ربي. This is from the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, فإذا جاء وعد ربي جعله دكا. Yet, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wills, this barrier, جعله دكا, it will lose its formidable build, the building, and it can become weak. Now, this is also science. We know with science, everything loses energy, everything loses power. It can get into meaning that, okay, I built you this, but it doesn't mean it's going to be there forever. And these nations will come back at you someday, somehow, but I did what I can do for now. وَكَانَ وَعْدُ رَبِّي حَقًّا. Is that him saying? He said, وَكَانَ وَعْدُ رَبِّي حَقًّا. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's promises are true. What Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala promises is true. وَتَرَكْنَا بَعْضَهُمْ يَوْمَئِذٍ يَمُوجُ فِي بَعْضٍ. Now the nations, they're going to continue mixing. Stop right here. The Prophet ﷺ actually woke up in one time in a dream, and he said that woe unto the Arab from evil coming their way. Although scholars had different opinions on the authenticity of this narration, but in the end is that he did say that some of the signs of Judgment Day is that Ya'juj Ma'juj, that those nations are going to come all the way and bring about destruction all over the world, to the point that they will even drink all the water from Tiberia. Lake Tiberia is in Palestine. They're going to totally wipe out everything. They'll be eating humans. They'll be killing humans. They'll be eating animals, whatever their hand can lay on. Sounds like China, huh? Whatever their hand lies on. Well, many scholars actually said that it is China, that it was going to become a great nation, and that Ya'juj Ma'juj, China, and those tribes, it doesn't have to be China, but China, Korea, well, I'm not sure why you said South Korea and not North Korea, but both are considered as part of Ya'juj Ma'juj. Political.
No Chinese Muslims.
No, there are Chinese Muslims.
Yeah, but then they say
wait.
1,000.
Hold on. So Ya'juj Ma'juj did actually bring about a whole wipeout, where from Mongolia, it was during the time of Hulako.
I know Hulako because
Hulako, and he actually came from the east and went into going westward. So we're talking about Afghanistan, Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, and went on that way and was killing in the most brutal way ever, even when it came to animals and humans, and torturing humans in the most brutal way ever.
Yeah.
Until he got to the capital of the Abbasid Khilafah, and in 656 Hijrah, killed 1 million Muslims in Baghdad. Totally. That was the end of the Abbasid Khilafah, to the point that the Khalifa himself ran away to Egypt. He was so scared. That was the end of Khilafah Abbasiyya, and in 656, the Muslims had lost millions of their manuscripts and all those writings in the Niles of Euphrates and in the river of Euphrates, and there it stayed for 7 days, dark from the ink, the amount of ink that was drowned in that river. Now, the Muslims, they were thinking that was the time of Ya'juj Ma'juj. We're in the day of judgment. The Muslims then, what was that?
His name was Halagu.
Hulaku. The Muslims then, well, here's the thing, is that group of people, they continue to cause devastation and do a lot of harm to the people, even until for a number of 100 and some years, to the point that later these people had become Muslim. Wait a minute, what? Even though they were the ones that defeated the Muslims, but later they were the ones to become Muslim. Here's what happened. Later it was Qutuz and al-Zahir Baybars. Even though it was actually Qutuz and al-Zahir Baybars, and those even though they were well, actually Qutuz was sold as a slave. You guys, ya Allah, I love seeing and talking about stories of how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala flips the world, and this young child that you think was oppressed will one day become the king in ways where you did not expect. Al-Zahir Baybars was a slave boy. The slave boy was sold. In fact, he had one eye that had glaucoma in it. He couldn't see with it, but he was a very mighty man, very strong man. Later, he ends up getting sold to a scholar. And this scholar teaches al-Zahir Baybars, but in the future, he gets sold again, and he gets sold to the king himself at the time. Later, he becomes, fast forward, this ex-slave later becomes the king of all the Muslim world at the time for 17 years. Look at how time turns. And this al-Zahir Baybars was one of the main personnels that brought in the Islamic civilization and the Islamic Khilafah back again. It's so sad that many times we don't know these stories and connect our children to the great heroes that were one time was nothing but a slave. How Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala changes things. Can make يؤتي الملك من يشاء وينزع الملك ممن يشاء. Gives kingdom, authority, whomever he wills, and takes it away from whomever he wills. Time turns, it doesn't end there. When we look at Ya'juj and Ma'juj, the Muslims then thought, this is the day of judgment. That's it. We're doomed. When Ya'juj and Ma'juj, or at the time they were called al-Mahul or al-Tatar, when they actually came, they were like, that's it. They've got the shoes that are made of hair. They've got the circle face. They've got the pale skin, which they considered white as pale. And they've got the small eyes that the Prophet ﷺ was talking about at Ya'juj and Ma'juj. This is them. We're doomed. And many Muslims reconciled. This is the day of judgment. That's it. There's nothing else in this world. We're doomed. But then, when you see other Muslims, no. We can't just say it's the end of the world and just reconcile. There's no more hope. That's it. Everybody's going into fitna. Everybody's going into fasad. There's no hope to bring about da'wah to people. You will see others that will still work and say, no, we weren't asked to reconcile and just lay down and say, that's it. It's the sign of Judgment Day. What to do? We can't do da'wah anymore. We're doomed. No, there are those that will still come and say, we're going to bring in what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told us to bring, honor to Islam and Muslims again. When we look at Ya'juj and Ma'juj, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in other ayat that Ya'juj and Ma'juj are one of the major signs of Day of Judgment. Is it China today? Is it what is the China superpower that is growing today, where it's growing economically, politically, and even right now they're even producing death to us with the coronavirus? All right. Is that what Yajuj and Ma'juj are? In the end, is that nations do change from one time to another. And nations, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did tell us of how, or the Prophet ﷺ actually said, "Bu'ithtu ana was-sa'ati kahatayn," that me and Judgment Day were sent like these two fingers, and he put up the index finger and the middle finger to make it seem like a graph. The graph is right there. The Prophet ﷺ is at the end of the graph, pointing at his index finger, and at the middle finger. The difference between these two graphs is pretty much the sign that the day of judgment. How soon? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, "Iqtarabat as-sa'a." Judgment day is soon. When we talk about Ya'juj and Ma'juj, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala answered the question, but it's also important for us to learn governance of how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talked about this king, that governance means more than just science. And it also includes legislature, and it also includes that the leaders themselves act in piety. Act in piety, because the epistemology, the foundation that you govern people on, and the way you treat people and law enforcement is going to determine whether this is a civilization or whether this is just a modernity. Modernity in bringing in science and all that, no one can deny it. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling you that a civilization is more than just having iPhones, cell phones, and all that. Even if Ya'juj and Ma'juj were one day we're going to be, as today, a superpower that's building and capable of doing everything pretty much in science. And in fact, they're the ones that are building these great bridges, great companies, and doing in every single corner. All right? Everything, the chairs that you're sitting on were actually designed in China, and every single corner you see China getting involved in it. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling you that what makes a civilization is not that only power, but it's also the governance. What are you basing that government on? What justice do you see and implement in the world around you? When we talk about justice, that's a very big word to talk about. But there can't be justice if the reference that we're using to define justice is broken. Unfortunately, yesterday, I was listening to a lecture by Yasser al-Qadi, and he was talking about the LGBT. He did an awesome job in the first maybe 25 minutes, but at the end, he ruined it. What was it? Although he said that, yes, it's haram to do istihlal, although he said that this is a sin, although he said that that there is something behind how fast they had become in power, and it only took them from 1965. He said all these beautiful things and great things, and I couldn't have said it better. But then he said, but it's against Islam to demonize these people. I thought I misunderstood. I thought I heard something wrong. I must admit, I even went to the dictionary. Do I know the wrong term of demonize? Did I understand the word demonize wrongly? So I went to the dictionary and said, maybe this Yale student speaks better English than me. And I actually went to the dictionary and I said, let me see what demonize means. to consider wicked or a threat. After all that you have said about how they had become strong, etc. Two things that attracted my attention. One, he said, we get a lot of support from them on the Palestinian issue, on Islam, Islamophobia, and against Islamophobia, blah, blah, blah. I agree with him. They support. But then he said, but we need their support. All the audience applauded. Although I did not hear a single thing from the audience in anything that he said before that, but the audience applauded when he said that.
They're not
Point number one. Point number two, said we cannot demonize them. And then he continues and says, they're all welcome in the masajid, yet they cannot teach the values that they teach, but they can come to get guidance and seek for guidance. Point number three, I agree with him. The masjid is open for all, anybody that committed a sin, regardless of what type that sin is, that the masjid is there always open as the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to embrace anybody that wants to repent. No doubt about that. But to say to not demonize, meaning that they are not a threat, that this sin is not a threat, is nothing but a diplomatic word. A diplomatic word that is contradicting every single word that he said in the lecture of how this is affecting our understanding of legislature and the way we upbring our kids, and even in schools of how our children are being indoctrinated. When we actually use and say words without us realizing, yes, this immorality, this illicit manner is indeed threatening our children's Islam, our morality, and our principle. I had to say that because when we look at Dhul Qarnayn as example, we look at that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was focusing that he had the foundation. If we continue on giving the diplomacy and the diplomatic talk regarding issues just because we may get some support is extremely dangerous. At the end of the lecture, for sure, what are people going to summarize his lecture into? It's only going to be in 2 words. All that he has said is going to be forgotten, but only one word is going to remain. We should not demonize. And that is going to be interpreted as we should tolerate.
So basically, in every aspect,
although I agree with him that he did mention that to not tolerate that behavior, it does not mean that I go and attack. Because I don't tolerate drinking, but it doesn't mean that if I see somebody drunk, that I'm going to carry my shoe and start hitting them with it. It doesn't mean so. This is a dichotomy that is not acceptable. Me not tolerating a certain sin, it doesn't mean that I'm going to go attack. Because attacking or punishing is nothing in nobody's right but the law enforcement. This is in Islam. But to say, let's not demonize is actually a very dangerous word, because you're actually then totally contradicting every single word that you had said in that lecture. That's enough to totally end your lecture in every single way when you say it's not a threat. When we have our place of the lens that we use to understand the world around us, our place, that lens is gone wrong, the rest of the things are gone wrong. Having the hikmah in the way we address to the public is extremely important. When you address something to the public, the person, the khatib, the person that's giving the lecture must remember that the whole lecture is going to be forgotten. There's only one sentence going to remain. One quote. Although he made it clear that yes, people are only going to quote one side, but unfortunately, even though I consider him a great talib ilm or a great scholar, but لكل جواد كبوة. No matter what a great horse rider you are, you will fall once. وَلِكُلِّ عَالِمٍ هَفْوَةٍ. And for every single scholar, there could be a time where they didn't notice something. They lost it, no matter who you are. And سقوط العالم سقوط العالم. العالم عالم. It's just one حركة. The fall of a scholar is when all the world falls. Inshallah. Hopefully, I'll be sending him an email to probably just assign that. Maybe he can hear it. But I must bring it to everybody's attention because that's how we support one another, to make sure that we're not getting carried away and forgetting those things. Let's continue. ونفخ في الصور فجمعناهم جمعا. What? حبيبة قلبي. ونفخ في الصور فجمعناهم جمعا. نفخ في الصور. Now, this is taking us into a different time. Remember when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was talking about Ya'juj and Ma'juj and how that wall was built, and the Prophet ﷺ in numerous hadiths actually said that Ya'juj and Ma'juj are a sign of Judgment Day, where they're going to control the world, basically going to attack everything that they see, and people are going to be so scared to fight back, where they will actually hide in different places because they're afraid that they might be attacked in any way, because they're going to be using gruesome ways of attacking other nations. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that finally it's not the people that bring an end to Ya'juj and Ma'juj, they actually bring an end to themselves. And the bow and arrow, they try to shoot at the top, it comes back at them. Is it a bow and arrow? Is it something that they throw and it destructs them? Allahu A'lam. But clearly, the Prophet ﷺ said out of 1,000 of Ya'juj and Ma'juj, 999 are going to hellfire. Only one will not. Only one. And Ya'juj and Ma'juj, it's the way the Prophet ﷺ described it, and the hadith that are describing it, is that they're actually a large and in large, huge numbers. Is this near? Allahu A'lam. But I'll tell you, never in my lifetime. Maybe I'm not that old, but looking at how life is changing throughout history, every single nation had, whether a false epistemology or a reference to go to or not, but every single nation regarded that there's something called truth that they need to look for. Every single nation. In our day and age, this is unprecedented. Throughout history, never was there a nation, never was there an era that regarded that there is no truth to life, that life is nothing but matter in motion. There were some groups that were called Dahriyin or Dahriyin that regarded that we're just created and etc. and all that. But those were very small groups. But to build a nation on absurdity is unprecedented. Right now, we're living in an era that has become global, in just a matter of just a number of years. I'm talking about in less than 2 decades, not centuries, but decades, where it's spreading globally that there is no truth and life is just matter in motion, and morality is nothing but collective myth. That idea is the scariest idea to ever spread, because if we say morality is a collective myth, that means morality is nonsense. If we base that on as our life, think of genocides, think of killing, think of every single immorality that we would consider, whether Jews, Christians, you can go Hindus, etc. They will regard certain things as immoral. They will still consider certain things as immoral or moral, whether you agree or you disagree with them. But to consider that immorality or morality is nothing but a collective myth. This idea, that idea is the beginning and the foundation of what all the hadith that spoke of Judgment Day, it is nothing but that idea. And the Prophet ﷺ, the way that he described the sons of Judgment Day are nothing but an implication and an implementation of that idea. No morality. Where no religion is true, where no morality, not people's lives are sacred, not people's education, not people's brains, not people's minds, where people will, even those that want to do what is haq, they'll be laughed at, where even zina is going to be on the streets, where zina is going to be everywhere flourished. In the second that you say anything, you will be cornered as committing a major sin. You will be cornered as a criminal. Right now, nobody dares to say that the LGBTQ plus is wrong and that it is nothing but destructing the foundation of family, the foundation of a community. Nobody dares to say that, because right now, anybody that dares to say that is being cornered as a homophobe. Nobody dares to say it. In just a matter of decades. When during my childhood, if you just said the word homosexuality, during my time, that's what it was called. It was in 1980s, 1987, not long ago. You were to get detention just to call somebody gay. That was considered a bad word. Just the word itself, you would get detention. And right now, if you dare say this is wrong, you will get detention. How things flipped. I consider 1987 as yesterday.
Me too.
Yesterday. How did things flip like that? The foundation itself, if we say morality is collective myth, it's not going to end up on LGBTQ plus. And the plus refers to 25 different groups. It's not going to end there. It's going to go into more and more and more. It's going to come where even having illicit actions with children, as long as there's consent. Maybe we'll begin with consent. Are we going to, in the future, say, well, anyways, consent is not, as John Locke considered, as sacred? And we'll say, well, anyways, it's a collective myth. Prove to me that consent needs to be acceptable too. And that I need to consent to his consent. If we say collective myth, and morality is a collective myth, this definitely, that idea is the scariest idea ever to come. And that idea is definitely sounding the beginning of the major signs of Judgment Day. Nas'al Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala al-afwa wal-afiyah. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this is the beginning. It makes me cry really, because I cannot fathom what will my children, my grandchildren's life will be like when right now we are seeing. Yesterday, Wallahi, I was supposed to go to St. Catherine. I was supposed to go to my office. I don't know why I did not go to my office, and I just walked somewhere else. I go into this room. Wallahi al-azim, that's what happened. I go into the room, and they're talking about men controlling women and blah, 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 all these different things, and feminism and all these different things. Make the story short. Sometimes, indeed, my speaking personality, my lecturing job takes over and dominates my personality. Indeed, I did comment on this is how, this is that, and you know, whatever they were bringing topic on, and it was all Muslim girls, to later discover it was this Muslim Student Association. I commented, I talked on every single topic that they rose. Of course, my specialty is fiqh. And then after I left with maybe 2 hours, the Muslim Student Association president comes over and she says, part of what she said, can you please give us the, you know, don't necessarily say everything and comment on Islam and what Islam says on everything. Let us say what our opinion is on Islam and what we think our opinion of Islam is or should say. No comment. Let us comment. This is exactly what part of it. Some of the things, you know, she said was nice, but when you actually say, let us also comment on things on Islam and let us give our opinion, what is that telling us? That even, oh, she's Muslim, mashallah, she's a good Muslim. She's trying hard. But we can sometimes say things and we can not understand the implications of what we're saying. All right? Because when you're actually saying, let us as Muslims, is Islam studied is Islam and how we interpret Islam, is it based on Muslims' interpretation? Or is it what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, his messenger said? It's not a Muslim's interpretation, Muslim with an apostrophe, yes?
Has to be sunnah.
Yes, you want to understand Islam, you go back to Islam. You go back to Islam. And the scholars are there because the hadith says, al-halalu bayyin, wal-haramu bayyin, wa baynahuma umurun mushtabihat, la ya'lamuhunna kathirun min an-nas. That halal is clear, haram is clear, but there are some things that are gray. Not many people know what it is, and those are the scholars. Many people don't know what it is. But there are some that know it. Those are the scholars. If you don't know, to actually say, let us comment and say what the Muslim's opinion. This is the postmodern. This is the postmodern way of interpreting religion, that it's based on people's interpretations and not the reference.
Yep.
People don't realize. Allah al-Musta'an. I don't know how we got there. وَنُفِخَ فِي الصُّورِ وَنُفِخَ فِي الصُّورِ, telling us the sign of Judgment Day. وَنُفِخَ فِي الصُّورِ, that the trumpet was blown. Okay, Zamzam, what you laughing about?
I love you.
Allah al-Musta'an.
She always get in trouble.
Yeah, I always get in trouble of getting off track.
Until you die.
وَنُفِخَ فِي الصُّورِ, and that's why I think tafsir is the best thing for me. That way I won't get off track too much because I've got something to go back to. وَنُفِخَ فِي الصُّورِ, and when the horn is blown. What horn? For the horn that, now this is taking us like just as Ya'juj wa Ma'juj, etc. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is tempting us, there's Ya'juj wa Ma'juj. But that's the sign of Judgment Day right there, because He was telling us, وَتَرَكْنَا بَعْضَهُمْ يَمُوجُ فِي بَعْضٍ. Those nations, they're going to now overcome each other. Ya'juj wa Ma'juj is going to overcome now. And then, وَنُفِخَ فِي الصُّورِ, when all of a sudden the trumpet is blown into, فَجَمَعْنَاهُمْ جَمْعًا. All the nations, including Ya'juj wa Ma'juj, and Ya'juj wa Ma'juj are humans, by the way. Okay? But it would be, an important question to say, when Yasir al-Qadi, I'm going to get back there again, when he said not to demonize, what if the Chinese will one day say, hey, you guys are demonizing us by calling us Ya'juj wa Ma'juj? We're not allowed to use that term anymore. All right? And what if we say, hey, well, the ayah actually calls them fasiqeen, the ayah says they're mufsideen, their ayat say that they're actually committing fahsha wal munkar, and here it is. Are the ayat demonizing what they're doing?
The ayats are very harsh.
The ayat are very clear. Is that demonizing?
Nope.
Allah al-Musta'an. وَنُفِخَ فِي الصُّورِ فَجَمَعْنَاهُمْ جَمْعًا. Okay, that was a footnote. فَجَمَعْنَاهُمْ جَمْعًا. That a footnote on the previous page. فَجَمَعْنَاهُمْ جَمْعًا. They were combined. Who? All the nations. وَعَرَضْنَا جَهَنَّمَ يَوْمَئِذٍ لِلْكَافِرِينَ عَرْضًا. And on that day, Jahannam, عرضنا, it was exposed where they could all see it. نسأل الله العفو والعافية. يومئذ للكافرين عرضا. When we say عرضنا and عرضا, this is called مفعول مطلق. What is مفعول مطلق? مفعول مطلق, when you say كلم الله موسى تكليما, عرضنا عرضا, شرب شربا. When the same verb comes in, it as actually a confirmation that no, I literally mean كلم الله موسى تكليما. I literally mean that Musa literally talked to Lord Almighty mouth to mouth or word to word. كلم الله موسى تكليما, that means literally. Prophet Musa alayhi salam literally spoke with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. All right, here when it says عرضنا جهنم, that Jahannam was exposed to all. للكافرين عرضا. It was literally عرضا. It was literally exposed where they could see it. الذين كانت أعينهم. طب wait a minute. عرضنا الذين كانت أعينهم. Because عرض is to expose something. And then it says الذين كانت أعينهم في غطاء عن ذكري, because their eyes were covered. So their eyes were covered, so now they will get to see and observe face to face. They will get to see and observe with their own naked eyes now Jahannam. نسأل الله العفو والعافية. الذين كانت أعينهم في غطاء, those that had their eyes covered, عن ذكري, away from dhikr. طب do eyes make dhikr? Or the tongues make dhikr? What makes the dhikr? Is it the eye or the tongue?
The tongue, both.
The eye and the tongue? And what about the ayah? وَمَنْ أَعْرَضَ عَنْ ذِكْرِي فَإِنَّ لَهُ مَعِيشَةً ضَنْكَ. طب معيشة is talking about behavior. Right? When we talk about ma'isha, meaning the lifestyle, the behavior that you do, the decisions that you make. That's ma'isha. Whoever stays away from the dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then they will have ma'isha, then they will have a lifestyle, then they will have a ma'isha, meaning decisions, and they'll go into a hard lifestyle. That's a behavior. And that's why when we look at dhikr, dhikr is more than just oral dhikr.
It's everything.
Here, كانت أعينهم في غطاء عن ذكري, that their eyes were away from dhikr. That's visual dhikr. That's the visual dhikr. And there's also فأنساهم أنفسهم, those that forget in Surah Al-Hashr, that those that forget the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, أنساهم أنفسهم, those that forget remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make them forget themselves. They won't even realize, how does He make them forget themselves? It's not like, oh, I forgot my name. No, forgot themselves, meaning forgot their priorities, forgot what the purpose of their life. What is success? Success is not getting a degree and all that. Those are tools. Success is not in the tools. Tools, yes, this is some success to get a tool of money, a tool of education, a tool of home, a tool of building a house. This is all tools. But success, قَدْ أَفْلَحَ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ. Success is basically determined based on the purpose, that how much did you achieve from the purpose that you were created for. Success is in Iman. How much did you achieve from your Iman? That's the true success. All the different things that you get are supposed to be tools. Building a house and building or getting a PhD degree, good for you. That's a tool. That's a tool in dunya. This is success in dunya. And if you use it for the akhirah, then it becomes an addition to the success that you were created for. The purpose is going, how much you achieve from that purpose is going to determine of how successful you are. That's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, قَدْ أَفْلَحَ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ. The real successors are the believers. That's the real success. All the other things, good for you. You got married. MashaAllah, great job. But guess what? Even animals get married. That's not necessarily an achievement. That's a tool. You built a house. Kuffar can build houses too. Doesn't mean anything. That's a tool. Good for you. Keep going. But the real success is in the akhirah. الذين كانت أعينهم في غطاء عن ذكري, that their eyes were away from dhikr Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What dhikr? Visual dhikr. To realize, أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. You realize, now there are several realizations. The realization of mind, which is shahada, أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. I bear witness. Now this is my mind understanding it. The realization of heart, which is al-Iman. Al-Iman, the realization that goes very deep into the heart to the point, al-Ihsan. You worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as if you can see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, being away from dhikri, being away from Islam, being away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they didn't realize the world around them was just a test. وَكَانُوا لَا يَسْتَطِيعُونَ سَمْعًا. طب wait a minute. وَكَانُوا لَا يَسْتَطِيعُونَ سَمْعًا. And they weren't able to see. طب wait a minute. I thought it was their eyes that were covered. And now you say that their ears couldn't hear. Was it the eyes or the ears that couldn't hear? What was far away from dhikr? Here it goes. كانت أعينهم في غطاء. Their eyes, meaning they couldn't even observe their life. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the magnificence of the creation around them, to realize that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is a magnificent creator. And that's why even when the words of reminder came to them, they couldn't hear them. What were they listening to? They were listening to other things. Their focus was gone. And that's why when we talk about level of Iman, remember level of Islam, Iman and Ihsan? When we talk about the level of Iman, which is the second level after you observe and you come to realization of haqq, the second level is a level of Iman. How do you get into the level of Iman? You get into the level of Iman when you go to the ayat, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, and it tells you what you're supposed to do. Alladhina amanu, and it tells you what you're supposed to do. And if you realize that that is the therapy that's telling you how you let your urges don't control you in order to be able to get to the focus. The focus on what? Seeing the unseen? Yes, the focus on seeing the unseen. But I thought it was unseen anyways. Well, it is there, but you don't recognize it because your sensation is too busy with other things. Your sensation is too busy with other things, too busy enjoying looking like a big shot, too busy enjoying that guys are looking at you, too busy getting the fame, too busy enjoying parties, too busy working on those sensations. Your sensations were dead from seeing the unseen. Allah, malaikatihi, kutubihi, wa rusulihi wal yawm al-akhir. Your sensations were so numb, they didn't even feel the level of Iman. And that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala actually says that المؤمنين, that تقشعر جلودهم, that their skin goes into goosebumps لذكر الله. What does that have to do with anything? That the sensation has gone farther than just a sensation that even their body would get goosebumps remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, their sensation have gone so strong in connecting with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that they were able to sense. And that's al-Iman. Al-Iman, you sense Iman. Action is one thing, but sensation of Iman is another level. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us this level. It's another level where eyes tear with it, body gets goosebumps with it, where every single part of you, تقشعر جلودهم, every single part of it feels La ilaha illallah. Not a word, but to the point that they started seeing the unseen. Not necessarily seeing with their naked eye, but seeing it to the point that they sense it. Allah, malaikatihi, kutubihi, wa rusulihi, wal yawm al-akhir. They live in it. You can't separate them away from it. When we look at the third one, al-ihsan, it's a different one, because أن تعبد الله كأنك تراه, the sensation grew so strong that it is literally as if they can see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now we move from one sensation to another. When we look at this ayah, كانت أعينهم في غطاء, they were not able to see the magnificence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to the point that it affected their hearing. Their focus on even hearing a reminder. When you remind them, they're too busy to even hear you. Busy with their pleasures, busy with other urges. Too busy that they couldn't hear you. And even when you wanted to say anything, they wouldn't even listen to you. Their mind will not even grasp what you're talking about. It's too focused on other materialistic things. When we talk about materialism in Islam, materialism is not only money, but away from dhikr. And that's why for dhikr, oral dhikr, because the ayah is telling us, dhikr, the word dhikr, dhakara, means to mention. But here it's telling you, ghita'in an dhikri, that they're so blinded from seeing the dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the truth of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created. Therefore, even the hearing, the audio dhikr, they couldn't hear it. They were so blinded. The audio dhikr, they couldn't hear it. Because their behavioral dhikr was taking them somewhere else. Their oral dhikr is going to repeat what their hearing dhikr heard, but they're too busy. Behavioral dhikr went wrong. It affected their dhikr, and it affected what they see, and it affected what they hear. And now they're far away. أفحسب الذين كفروا أن يتخذوا عبادي من دوني أولياء. أفحسب الذين كفروا. Did those that disbelieve think that they can take my servants, من دوني أولياء, servants, as authority away from me? This is talking about people that might have taken authority. Maybe Christians believe in Christ as the Lord. عبادي, it's عباد Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Isn't Prophet Isa عليه السلام قال إني عبد الله آتاني الكتاب وجعلني نبيا. Abdullah. Now, when we say عبادي, this is telling you that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala controls everything. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, like, those people, those are my creatures. Why would you take them as your authority, as the epistemology, as those to tell you what's right and what's wrong, as those to bring about the references? إِنَّا أَعْتَدْنَا لِلْجَهَنَّمَ لِلْكَافِرِينَ نُزُلًا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala shifted a little bit right here. and said, all right, you took them away. You took them as the authority instead of taking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Well, inna a'tadna, so this is saying, well, Jahannam is prepared as the place for final destination. نسأل الله العفو والعافية. قل هل ننبئكم بالأخسرين أعمالا. Tell them, should we tell you the real losers? Those that are really بالأخسرين أعمالا, meaning the ones to really be the biggest losers. Who? الذين ضل سعيهم في الحياة الدنيا. Those that they wasted their time in this life, dunya, وهم يحسبون أنهم يحسنون صنعا, when they thought that they were doing the right thing. Because remember, الأخسرين, now this is redefining, just like we define success, this is also defining losing. What is losing? Those that waste their time, because the purpose of life is going to define for you how much you achieved from it based on the purpose. Purpose preceded the creation of life. So how much you achieved from this purpose is how successful you were. And how much you did not achieve is how much you lost. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us, الَّذِينَ ضَلَّ سَعْيُهُمْ, ضَلَّ سَعْيُهُمْ, meaning that they were putting effort, but ضَلَّ سَعْيُهُمْ, but the effort has gone wrong.
The scale was not right in the beginning.
ضَلَّ سَعْيُهُمْ, they did put in effort, but the effort was just in the wrong place. It was just in the wrong place. ضَلَّ, they were just confused about where the effort should be. Thought that, oh, she's a leader. Why? Because she actually managed to be a picture of a hijabi on a Playboy magazine. Seriously.
And she worked hard to be there.
ضل سعيهم في الحياة الدنيا. Worked hard to get the votes and actually marched in a gay parade march. ضل سعيهم. نسأل الله for Ilhan and Noor Tagrouri and all these different people. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give them hidayah and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala hold them steadfast. This is not making fun, but this is when somebody goes public, it is our responsibility to actually say that is a deviation. That particular part is a deviation. Do not do it. Because many will think that, oh, mashallah, she managed to be on a magazine. Oh, mashallah, she managed to get votes. She managed to be in Congress. She managed to be in a feminist parade. She's actually saying abortion is halal and she's being brought on CNN. It doesn't make you the leader in Islam. And it doesn't make you successful in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because implementing haqq is not about how many people clap for you.
You can be alone.
ضل سعيهم في الحياة الدنيا وهم يحسبون أنهم يحسنون صنعا. They would think that they're doing the right thing. يحسبون أنهم يحسنون صنعا. And this is delusion. Your mind can delude you when you think I'm doing the right thing. I'm becoming famous. Look how many people are applauding me. Look how many people are supporting me. I'm doing the right thing. أولئك الذين كفروا بآيات ربهم. Those are the people that denied the words of their Lord. بآيات ربهم ولقائه. They denied the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and even meeting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When we talk about meeting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Adi ibn Hatim al-Ta'i, he narrated a hadith and he said that the Prophet ﷺ told him, Ya Adi, by Allah, you will stand before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with no interpreter between you and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, meaning face to face. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but of course, if they're not believers, they won't get to see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But if they're mu'mineen at a certain level in Jannah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala considers that the best reward in Jannah is to see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. May Allah make us from those that see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. To the point that the malaika, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give the people in Jannah reward, and then will tell them after giving them all the reward, and then He will say, are you content now? And then they would say, yes, Ya Allah, we're content. So he would ask them, what is it more that you want? And they would ask to see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And they would see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then they would say, Radina, Radina, Radina. We are content, we are content, we are content. Because that was the best prize that they would ever thought they would get when they see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The amount of content. Radina, Radina, Radina. That's when they all sounded out. This is magnificent. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala actually says, كَلَّا بَلْ رَانَ عَلَى قُلُوبِهِمْ مَا كَانُوا يَكْسِبُونَ. And what is it? That they're going to be عَنْ رَبِّهِمْ يَوْمَئِذٍ لَا مَحْجُوبُونَ. That the worst punishment is that they will be a barrier that they cannot see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us from those that will see the face of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Ameen. فَحَبِطَتْ أَعْمَالُهُمْ. All that they were doing and all the successes that they thought that they were achieving, حَبِطَتْ أَعْمَالُهُمْ. It will just all be like a mirage. Well, it was all going to be going somewhere else. It ended. You worked so hard on getting that achievement. Was it really an achievement? Or was it something that is taking you somewhere else? It wasn't an achievement. حَبِطَتْ أَعْمَالُهُمْ. All what matters in their life, the success of considering al-akhirah, they did not work on that. They were focused on a different behavior. فَلَا نُقِيمُ لَهُمْ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ وَزْنًا. And on Judgment Day, they will not even, لَا نُقِيمُ لَهُمْ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ وَزْنًا. There are two sides of it. Literally means that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not going to give them any weight. It doesn't mean that there's no gravity. But metaphorically, لا نقيم لهم وزنا in Arabic, it actually means that they will not be given any attention. They will not be given any considerable attention or focus. Why? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is like, go away. You turned away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There you go. Now you're gone. فَلَا نُقِيمُ لَهُمْ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ وَزْنًا. You put all the weight of your effort, all your capacity in a wasteful manner. Now you will not have any capacity. You will not have any weight. You will not have any attention. ذَلِكَ جَزَاؤُهُمْ. That is جَزَاؤُهُمْ. That is their reward. Jahannam. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keep it away from us. بِمَا كَفَرُوا. For what they have denied. وَاتَّخَذُوا آيَاتِ وَرُسُلِي هُزُوًا. They only took the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the prophets as a place of mockery. When we look at that, a place of mockery, taking the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the prophets and what the words contained and what the message contained as mockery, is also telling us that those that also follow the words, don't be surprised if you're also taken into mockery. They'll laugh at you, but that's not strange. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in Surah al-Buruj, وَمَا نَقَمُوا مِنْهُمْ إِلَّا أَن يُؤْمِنُوا بِاللَّهِ الْعَزِيزِ الْحَمِيدِ. The reason why they were tortured, prosecuted, is really because they believed in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, al-Aziz al-Hamid. Al-Aziz al-Hamid, the one that has all the power. Aziz al-Hamid. That's why they tortured them. And that's the same thing. When we look at mockery, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling you that, yeah, al-ayat wal-rusul, they took them into mockery. But remember, as in Surah al-Mutaffifin, that فَالْيَوْمَ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا مِنَ الْكُفَّارِ يَضْحَكُونَ. Today, before they were actually making fun of the believers. إِذَا مَرُّوا بِهِمْ يَتَغَامَزُونَ. Whenever they would see them, يَتَغَامَزُونَ. They'll be hinting and making mockery of the believers. وَإِذَا انْقَلَبُوا إِلَىٰ أَهْلِهِمْ انْقَلَبُوا فَكِهِينَ. And when they go to their families, they'll be using and talking about the believers and about the deen, etc., as a place for enjoyment. You know, it's like fakihin. They're enjoying it. They're making it as a place to kind of chill out. Fakihin. It's their fruit. It's their entertainment. It's their dessert to enjoy their settings, to laugh at the believers, to laugh at how they're considerate about al-akhirah, etc. إِنَّ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ. As for those that believe and do what is good, كَانَتْ لَهُمْ جَنَّاتُ الْفِرْدَوْسِ نُزُلًا. They will get Jannat al-Firdaus. Jannah is like a triangle. In the lowest level of that triangle, there's a lot more people. And the upward you go, the less there are people. Right? And that's why the higher you go in your deen, the less friends you'll have. Expect that. The higher you go in your deen, the less friends. You're going to be losing a lot of friends. And you won't be invited to parties because you're no fun. You won't be invited over unless there's a calamity. They'll use you for those times. But the more you grow in your deen, the more you're not going to be a fakiha to them. The more that they're not going to enjoy having you around, but you're going to be a fakiha to them. You're going to be that entertaining part where they mock you. Depends on. كانت لهم جنات الفردوس نزلا. They'll have Jannat al-Firdaus. Jannat al-Firdaus is the highest level. Very few people get to that level. Very few people get to that level. خالدين فيها لا يبغون عنها حولا. They will be خالدين فيها. They will be there forever, eternity. لا يبغون عنها حولا. And they too don't want to go somewhere else. Now, قل لو كان البحر مدادا لكلمات ربي لنفد البحر قبل أن تنفذ كلمات ربي ولو جئنا بمثله مددا. It's actually 3:30 and I need to go pick up my kids. At least خالدين فيها لا يبغون عنها حولا will end there inshallah, and we'll continue the last four lines next week inshallah. Well, at least may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us from الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات, and to give us جنات الفردوس نزلا, and make us from those that will be خالدين فيها لا يبغون عنها حولا. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.